Here another movie for you guys, and this movie reviewing, I was definitely looking forward to this movie. In fact, it was probably the movie I was most looking forward to this month. It was a movie that I really wanted to see in theaters, and wanted to see this last week. Didn't get a chance to see this till this week, but you guys don't really care about that. But let's just get into the movie I'm going to be reviewing is Star Trek Beyond. As you guys know, I am a big fan of Star Trek, and I have both of the first two movies on Blu-ray, but I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan. Like, I don't know a lot about Star Trek, but I've really enjoyed both films, and because of that, I was definitely looking forward to this movie. But I was worried a bit, mainly because of the fact that the trailers weren't that great. Well, the first trailer wasn't that great, but I had hope, because Simon Pegg said that he didn't like the way the marketing was done, so I was really hoping the movie would be great, and then the second trailer happened, it was really good. And I have to say that the trailers really didn't do this movie justice at all, because the movie's a lot better than you probably think it is. I really enjoyed Star Trek Beyond overall. I think it's a really entertaining film. It is the definition of a great summer blockbuster, and it's a really fun film. I mean, there's so many things to really love about it, but let's get to the plot of Star Trek Beyond, which, the plot of this movie is pretty simple. Basically, we're of course, on the Enterprise. The Enterprise ends up having some malfunctions, and they end up crash landing on this planet. Basically, they end up crash landing on this new planet, we find out, and basically what ends up happening is that they all end up splitting up because they're trying for different reasons and for different things and things like that, but they all have to face the wrath of this villain called Karl. Karl is this villain that wants this artifact, and we don't really know why he wants it, and they're trying to get away from him and basically get back to the ship so that way they can get off this land or whatever, and that basically is the plot of Star Trek Beyond in a nutshell. I know there was a very bad plot synopsis, but that's the best way you can sum it up. I will say, Star Trek, the one thing is it's not the easiest way to say what the plots of both of these movies are, but that basically is the plot in a nutshell. But that's not really the thing that makes this movie, I have to say. Because as good as the plot is in this movie, the thing that really makes this movie is the cast. I think everyone here did a great job. It should be no secret at this point that Chris Pine and Zachery Quinto are fantastic as Kirk and Spock. In fact, Chris Pine recently said in an article that he is this character down to a T, and honestly, yeah, I mean, this is the character that made Chris Pine the great actor he is today. If he was in this movie, I think he'd still be doing cheesy romantic comedies, and he really does a great job here. He really has blossomed as an actor, and you definitely do see that here. And he's gone so far since Kirk. Kirk's not been the only role he's played. You know, he's really branched out since then. You definitely do see that here. You really see his versatility here and how versatile he is, as well as Zachery Quinto, who's gone and do a lot of things. So a lot of these characters, you know, a lot of these actors, you know, they were great in these movies, but they've shown that they can do more beyond these roles, and they're still great here. I think the real highlight of this movie is Karl Urban. I think he does a great job in this movie. He's a lot of fun to watch as Bones, and his interaction with Spock is fantastic. As you guys know from the trailer, they do end up getting separated from the rest of the group, and it's a lot of fun to watch, because as we know, Spock and Bones do not really get along as well, and they're a lot of fun to watch. I really like what they did with them in this movie, and kind of seeing them get closer to one another and bonding a lot more, and definitely having to separate, I thought was really well done, and also because Spock and Bones are both going through a lot in their life, particularly Spock, and he has these really great conversations with Bones. There was some very good scenes to see those two interact. I like what they did with them overall, and I thought Karl Urban definitely did a very good job. Zoe Saldana is great. She doesn't have a ton to do in this movie, really. I don't really think she had a lot. But by far, the star of this movie, without a doubt, is Sofia Boutella. I love this character of Jayla. She's a badass, but she's also really laid back. She likes to listen to a lot of 90s grunge music, kind of like the Beastie Boys, and I thought that was kind of cool. But she also has a heart, and there's a really great backstory with her character that we get into a little bit later. And she has a history with Karl, and she is just enough of a reason to go after Karl as they do, and I really liked her character overall. The interactions between her and Simon Pegg are great because of how different those two characters are, which obviously, you know, it should be no secret that Simon Pegg is great. I mean, anything you give him is just genius. He really is fantastic, and him and Sofia Boutella work very well together, and like I said, Simon Pegg is one of those actors where he just has great chemistry with anyone he works with. I mean, I think he works as well with the Star Trek cast as he does the Mission Impossible cast, and really, those are two very different roles, and I think he does a great job with both roles. You know, he's as good as Benji as he is with Scott here. I think he did a very good job in this. John Cho is really good. And of course, if people are wondering, Anton Yelchin, he doesn't have a ton to do in this movie, but he has a significant part as Chekhov, and it is definitely very sad. Rest in peace, Anton Yelchin, but I think they did some really good stuff with him here. Obviously, they didn't know he was going to die, so unfortunately, this is his last appearance, and I won't say that this is probably the best way to go out, because obviously, like I said, I didn't know he was going to die, but I do think they gave him a good amount of stuff to do, definitely. But I also want to talk about Idris Elba for a second in this movie, because Idris Elba is really fucking good here. I mean, he really plays a very good role. He's awesome in anything you give him. For a while, he's kind of like your stereotypical, just villain who has this really, menacing voice and says a lot of evil things, but towards the third act of the movie, when you realize what his real plan is, he becomes so much more interesting. They actually make you sympathize with him and get behind him, and you honestly kind of understand why he wants this artifact so much, and I really think he did a great job. I really think he was fantastic, and they took what could be a very cliche villain and just a really much a one-off and made him a much more three-dimensional character. I really like what they did with him. Is he as good as Benedict Cumberbatch? Hell no. I mean, I don't think you really can be as good as Benedict Cumberbatch. You really have big shoes to fill. And there is definitely a difference between Benedict Cumberbatch and Idris Elba. Both fantastic actors, but just Idris Elba does not have that presence that Benedict Cumberbatch has. However, he still is a great actor. I still think he did a great job. And the cast as a whole, that's definitely something I will sum up, is that the cast here, they still all work great. They still are fantastic. Everyone really did a fantastic job here. You really do get that Star Trek feel throughout the movie, and that's something I definitely will say, is that the entire cast here really is fantastic, and they all still work fantastic together. But I know the one thing we were all worried about, of course, is the directing, because while the first two movies were great, mainly was because of J.J. Abrams and how big as a fan he was of the Star Trek, and also his style, and his style really works with that series, and also, of course, work with Star Wars. However, J.J. Abrams is not doing this movie. Justin Lin is, and that's something that I know a lot of people were worried about, because while Justin Lin is very good with the Fast and Furious movies, is he really good for a Star Trek movie? I will say right now, yes, he got this movie down perfectly, mainly because this is a fun movie. It's not an ultra dark movie. I think Justin Lin really was the perfect director to direct this movie, because this is quite an action heavy film. There's not a lot of time to breathe in this movie. I mean, definitely there are a lot of talking scenes, but mainly most of this movie is constant action. I think he did a very good job directing the action, but he also did a good job directing the character and some of the more smaller moments. It's something I think that Justin Lin was very good with. You can tell he was having a lot of fun, and I'm pretty sure that he was a fan of Star Trek. I mean, you gotta be at least a big fan, especially when it's the 50th anniversary. You gotta have a good director to do that, and I think Justin Lin really was the right director to do that. If you guys don't know, J.J. Abrams did in fact produce this movie, but Simon Pegg really I think is the one to give credit to here, because his writing really is fantastic. And the thing about this movie is, even though we do have the central conflict of Karl, that's not the main focus of this movie. The main focus of this movie really are the characters and their struggles. I mean, everyone in this movie really is facing some sort of crossroads in their life, whether it's a relationship problem or feeling like their life is episodic, kind of like Kirk says in the very beginning of the movie, which is quite clever, or something that Karl did to their family. Everyone really is feeling something, and you really can get behind every character. In fact, this movie made me actually like some more of the characters. I've always really liked Kirk and Spock, definitely. I think they did a really good job, but this movie made me love the character of Bones. Not that I didn't like Bones, but I just feel that Bones had so much more to do here, and Karl Urban just knows this character so well. They made me love this character so much more than they did in the first movies. Not that he was bad there, but I think he just did a lot more, and he had a lot more to do, definitely. The best way I can sum this movie up, though, is that while the first two movies feel like movies, this one definitely feels more like a long, I've heard a lot of people say it's that an extended episode of a TV series, and I will definitely say that. Why? Because this very much feels like a one-off. You kind of know by the end everything's going to be okay, you know kind of what's at stake, and you kind of see where it's going to go. The movie is a little bit predictable in that regard, except until the whole Karl twist, but the thing that I do like about it is that doesn't make it a bad movie. This is just more of a fun movie. Star Trek Into Darkness, that was a dark movie, even though it was called Into Darkness. The first movie had some fun and dramatic moments. The second one really was dramatic. This one's more of a fun movie. There isn't a ton of dramatic stuff here. There is some good dramatic material, but this definitely is more of a fun movie rather than a dramatic film, and I honestly really appreciate them for doing that, because not every movie needs to be ultra dark, and this movie really understands that. Not every movie needs to be dark to be great, and that's something I really loved, is that this movie really, it knows when to be dark, and it knows when to be light, and it really knows how to handle that kind of tone. I think that's something that Simon Pegg did really well. He added some of that great wit that Simon Pegg had here. You can definitely tell that he wrote this, and there also, I thought, were some really great nods to the original cast. Now, I'm not someone that knows a lot about Star Trek. In fact, literally all I know about Star Trek are these two movies. I'm not even gonna lie. These are the only things I know about these three movies, is that, you know, that's all I know. I just know about these three movies. You know, who's in it, what happened. That's literally all I know. And I know some stuff about the Wrath of Khan, like, you know, how Into Darkness borrowed stuff from the Wrath of Khan, but I think anyone that's seen that movie knows that. You know, pretty much from the way Star Trek Into Darkness went, it's kind of like Wrath of Khan. This one's kind of like the third movie I heard. And I also know that every movie, you know, every even movie is good, every odd movie isn't. I know that kind of thing, but I don't know a ton about Star Trek. And this movie, what I like is that they pay a lot of respect to those individuals that were in the original series, because of course Leonard Nimoy died, and I think they do a good tribute to him that I really did enjoy. But I will say this is definitely the weakest of the three, mainly because the fact that it just feels a lot smaller. It feels a lot smaller in scale. It doesn't always feel like there's as much at stake, and sometimes it feels a bit meandering. And what I mean by that is, the first, I'd say, like 20 minutes of this movie, it doesn't really feel like much is going to happen, and that's kind of intentional, you see. I mean, Kirk even says in the movie that his life is feeling a little bit episodic, and I get that that's what they were trying to go for. They were trying to make a nod that this is going to feel like a TV episode, and it very much does. But until the group really gets split up, that's really when the movie got going, because before, while I was enjoying the movie, I'm like, I don't know about this. Is this really, what's at stake here? What are we really doing here? Is there really much of a plot? Because throughout the movie, you don't really know what the major plot is, and what's, you know, have a lot of the movies like that. But eventually, once we meet the character of Jayla, and once everyone gets split up, that's really when I think the movie really starts to get going. And once it got going, it really did get going. And I gotta say, the cinematography here is fantastic. I think it did an incredible job with the cinematography. I was very much on the edge of my seat many times, but this is not really a movie where I'd say you're on the edge of your seat. It's more a movie where you're just kind of there for the ride. You're just kind of having fun. And you're just kind of watching things unfold. And it's very much, I'd say, like a Fast and Furious movie, where you know some of the stuff in that movie is a little bit ridiculous, but you're willing to go along with it. And in this movie, they kind of do some of the same things. And I will say right off the bat, the Beastie Boys song is in this movie. The one in the first trailer, it is in this movie, but in the right way. They used it very well. I actually thought it was actually one of the more fun moments of this movie, but the cinematography looks really good. Space in general, it still looks fantastic, and you still feel like you're in outer space, and you still feel like you're getting that Star Trek feel. It didn't lose that Star Trek feel that we got in the first two movies, and that's something I was kind of worried about because of different directors, but because of Simon Pegg being on board, and him knowing this world and this series, they're able to tell the story that they want to tell, and I definitely really did like that. The score here was great. I absolutely love the Star Trek score. I think it's just an incredible score overall. The score they've had to all three of these movies I really loved. And then Sledgehammer, the song by Rihanna, I think is really good. It's not played in this movie, which is really weird because it's meant to be the theme for this movie, and it's not in this movie, but I think she did a really good job. I really like the song. I just kind of wish I heard it in this movie because it wasn't in this movie. I mean, it's played instrumentally at the end, but I didn't really hear it much. The editing's a bit choppy, I will say that. If there's one thing I will complain about, I think the ending could have been stretched out a little bit more. I think the ending the climax is a little bit implausible, but that's kind of what Star Trek is. I mean, Star Trek is all about, you know, doing impossible things and, you know, exploring these impossible worlds, you know, space, the final frontier, that kind of thing. That's always been Star Trek. So that went with it, and I think that worked very well, and I definitely really appreciate that. I just think the movie could have been a little bit longer, because this is definitely the shortest of the two. You know, the first two movies were not long, but they were a little bit longer than this one was, and I was surprised that this one was as short as it was. But really, guys, when it comes down to it, Star Trek Beyond is an absolute blast. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's one of the best movies of summer, without a doubt. I really did love it. Not one of the best movies of the year, but definitely one of the best of the summer. I think it's definitely one of the most entertaining I've seen all year, and I am definitely going to give Star Trek Beyond a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. Even though this movie isn't as good as the first two, it's still a lot of fun. They have some great character moments, and it's equaled, I think, with some fantastic action. There's some great action here, there's some great character moments, and it really balances out well. I just don't think it was as, you know, executed as well as the first two was, and I think the first two just felt a lot different. Not different, but this one's just a lot smaller. This one feels more like a TV show. It's a little bit smaller, but I'd still recommend it. It's one of the best movies this summer, and I think you definitely should check it out. Don't listen to what the marketing says. I think the marketing's a lot different. The marketing really was not that great for this movie. Go see it. I think you'll have a great time. It's definitely one of the best times I think you can have in a movie theater right now. But overall, guys, in my review, Star Trek Beyond, let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Have seen, left your thoughts in it. I really did enjoy this movie overall. I thought, like I said, it was very entertaining. I really loved everything about it. What do you think of the twist in the movie with Karl? I thought that definitely was very well executed. And like I said, I think there were some good nods to Leonard Nimoy and Anton Yelchin. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Outcast. I know I have 2 episodes to review, and I will review both of those, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.